It's time again to talk about leadership. Something that I'm looking at lately is the use of the word my and our in the vernacular of leaders. And I'm watching and listening to leaders talk about the things that they possess, right? I own a company and I run this team and I am over this project. And those things are fine as a leader to be the person who is at the helm. There has to be somebody at the helm. That's just all there is to it. As a leader, however, playing the relationship game, there has to be this sense of community and relationship involved in every single thing that we do. And so as I'm watching people get more and more involved in social media and talking about who they are and what they do and watching some of these leaders start to rise, it is really interesting to see the word my enter their vocabulary so often when they're talking about the things that are happening in and around their leadership. And again, that's nothing wrong with taking ownership inside of what you do. But there is a danger, I think, when you vocalize publicly that word my over and over and over again, because it begins to start to separate you from your team. And in the process, I believe that you're creating gaps inside of the space of the relationships that you want to build. When I look at the overall arching view of leadership, everything that we're doing is about relationship, and that's real obvious. And yet how much of leadership tends to like really stroke the ego, and it really comes in and it places a stronghold inside of our ego. I don't care how great of a leader you are. There is something about your ego that is ticking when you are leading people. They're following and they're affirming who you are. And so when we begin to start seeing that word my trickle into our vocabulary over and over and over again, it does become a little bit dangerous. And the reason why I think it becomes dangerous is that we will move towards narcissistic tendencies because of the satisfaction that comes from being praised and becoming this great leader, especially when we touch something that blows up or becomes something really, really phenomenal. We get really excited about that. And I'm not saying that you should not take credit for the way in which you lead, but it is dangerous when we start using that word my way too often, and we start taking away the relationship that helped us get where we're going and get where we are going and get where we've been. When we come into a place where we neglect that relationship element, people notice that, and they notice that in a big way. And the reason why I have the ability, I think, to speak to this is that I led in that way, for a very long time, and it did really well for me until it didn't. And so one of the things that I want to give to you guys out there is there's this guy on Instagram. He's called Narc Abuse Coach. Now, this is somebody who I am not endorsing by no means, but if you're curious about narcissists and about narcissism and how that can kind of creep into your life if you're not careful, he does post a lot of things about narcissists and what it means and how they act and interact. And I think the danger would be if you start reading these things and you start seeing yourself reflected inside of that, then your version or your use of the word my may actually already be tainted in your leadership space. And you've got to do something right now to make a correction in that. Because if you are a good leader, you don't want to destroy the relationships are around you, but to become a narcissist and to use my in such a way that doesn't give credit where credit is due, you will find those relationships crumbling. When I was leading in a similar space where I'm at now as a broker, I actually got this like big boost in an ego. See, I never led before ever in my life inside of that space, and I was brand new as a real estate agent. And so as I was trying to figure out like, well, what do I do here? What do I do here? And I began to find success because people are attracted to my personality, attracted to my vision. It stroked my ego so well. I thrived on the attention. I thrived on the credit that was given. Now there's a lot of background that's happening inside of that space, but like the reality is, as a leader, I enjoyed that a lot. And it totally trickled into the world that I was around. Now, the people who are closest to me gave me, I think, a lot of grace and a lot of credit where credit was due. And yet I look back on that space and I see how often I took the credit and took the credit really away from some of the best people that I've ever worked with. We are treading on dangerous ground when our natural reaction, when we're talking about the people who are around us, who are helping us elevate, helping us grow as leaders, those who are following our vision, when we claim all of it in that my vocabulary, we are eventually creating a roadblock or a gap that is going to start to trickle into relationships that we thought were sound, that will begin to falter because of our use of that simple 2-letter word and not giving people their time to shine. One of the books that I love is Leaders Eat Last, and it's by Simon Sinek, and he's got inside of part of his book, he says, the true price of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above your own. Great leaders truly care about those they are privileged to lead and understand that the cost of the leadership privilege comes at the expense of self-interest. That is the reason why the overuse of the word my will begin to deteriorate your leadership level, and it could potentially bomb what it is that you're leading. It's just the truth. Now, picking on that my word, a lot of people will go to the extreme opposite of that and use the word our. And the word our, there's no big challenges with the word our. I like the word our, but I'm also a person who used this word in the wrong way again, which is why it was really important to me, why I can pick up and I can listen and hear when people are talking about their leadership and they start to use these words my or our. The overuse of the word our also creates a bit of a challenge when I, as a leader, give away too much credit. So I go to the extreme opposite, and so I want to sound like this great, wonderful, amazing, selfless leader. And so I start using this word our way too often. And I don't take credit for the things that I have built. The things that I have and should have built inside of leadership, I should have built a mission. I should have built a vision. I should have built values. I should have built a perspective. I should have built the objectives. Those are the things that I should have created as a leader. Now, you can have people inside of your leadership team or council that will help you build those things. And yet those are the things that have naturally come from you. If you are a leader, those are the things that are naturally coming out. Those are the reasons why most people are following you, is because of your mission, your vision, your values. So when I take that space and I give it away over and over and over again, it will create a bit of tension inside of your leadership because you are still the leader. We as selfless leaders tend to give away way too much, way more than we should. And it really does create another version of that disconnect. So the my disconnect is that it begins to breed narcissism. The our disconnect is it begins to breed kind of a character disorder in a good way. And since it's in a good way, or it doesn't feel bad, it seems right. And it's not. If I am the person who is really in charge of making sure vision and values is cast and move forward and accountable, well, then it's okay for me to say, I really appreciate Dave today for what he's done in taking my vision and running with it and doing all these things. And what we have to do to celebrate Dave today is blah, blah. So we use those terms but I don't think there's any challenges with you saying like, this was my vision. I'm so grateful for Dave for jumping into my vision. And now we as a team have so much opportunity to move forward because of what we have all done to take this and capitalize on it and grow. And I just have to thank every single one of you. And you know what I mean? So there is that way in which you can still take credit where you need to be the credit. You need to be the strong leader and leave room for those who are working with you to be able to feel edified and affirmed in what they're doing. So there's really is a delicate balance in using that word my and using that word our. And I think it just has to do with the check of your heart. I love the idea of this, the Buddhist phrase. It's, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so if we are overly using any kind of these words, these vocabulary words that are just going to be a natural overflow of our heart, well, then we need to check ourselves and see like, well, if this is the way that I'm doing this, this is the way I do anything, this is the way I do everything. Well, if this is the way that I'm being, where else am I taking way too much ownership, way too much possession in my relationships at home, my relationships with my children? Where else am I letting my ego get the best of me? Where am I letting the narcissism get the best of me? In the same sense, like, have I become too selfless in everything I do? And so all of my relationships, I'm not standing up and being the leader that I need to be though it feels right because I'm giving away way too much credit. I'm giving away way too much ownership. And unfortunately, I'm losing grip on the things that are around me because I give them away so often. It's hard to be a leader. It just is. We do have to think about the words that we use and how often we use these words, though. That's something that's really strong inside of me. I want to look at and feel and listen to and hear how I speak, what I'm speaking. Even this podcast, I'll go back and listen to it before it goes live because I want to hear what are the words that I'm using. Am I overusing anything? And then do I need to check myself and say, these are the spaces where I probably need to start working on me because the words that I'm using are coming out way too often to be a negative or overly positive. There is a balance inside of what we do as leaders. It definitely has to be there. Something that I look at that I want to encourage you in is that if you're having challenges using that word using that word our way too often, shift the credit that you want to give into gratitude. Shift the credit into gratitude. Start being grateful. Start speaking out loud or writing and showing people your gratitude. That is one of the very first things that you can do that will help you really balance what it is that you want to do inside of your relationships as a leader without taking your ego and letting it run wild, and also not letting your ego sit on the back burner in such a way that now your leadership is confusing. Okay? Use gratitude as a tool to make sure that everybody around you feels like they are participating in your leadership and not just a product of your tasks. That, I think, is one of the key elements to making sure that you have your intentions in the right place, is coming from a state of gratitude always. So what I would say to you, leaders, understand where it is that you're coming from. Listen to the words that you use. Why are you using those words? And take back your words and use them in a way that brings everything together inside of relationship. Make sure those relationships are strong. Those people who are working with you are strong. Make sure they feel connected, and use gratitude as your tool to make sure that that check is always going to be in place for you to continue to grow and to weed out the words that could be detrimental to your growth, checking your heart so that then now the idea of how I do anything is how I do everything really begins to shine, because what you're doing is coming from a natural space of who I am and not who I think everybody else needs me to be. You guys are amazing. I hope you have a beautiful day. And remember, you can subscribe to any of these videos, any of these podcasts, wherever they are. Catch up whenever I post these. It's an honor to be able to speak into this microphone and have you listen. So thank you very much and have a beautiful day.